Hello and welcome to Talk Leadership with Cedrick. You know, everybody needs a little TLC. Talk Leadership with Cedrick is where we focus on leadership and personal growth with business leaders, educators, and local thought leaders. Our goal is to introduce our audience to leaders who are making an impact with innovative ideas. You know, our guiding leadership principle is the law of contribution, which says growing yourself enables you to grow others. So you can't give what you don't have. So first, you must grow yourself in order to grow others. We believe that outstanding leaders like yourself can help us help others. So tonight, we have another dynamic leader. And, you know, every week I like to do a proper introduction of our guests. So let me introduce Mr. Josh Rich to the show. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you, Cedrick. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. You know, Josh says we're all on this journey called life. I believe that there's so many variables that impact us becoming the best version of ourselves. He says, I was a C- student in high school and my SAT scores were not all that great. And I questioned whether I had the acumen to succeed in college. He says, however, I still applied to college, and while I was rejected by some big name schools, I was accepted by an HBCU, UMass. And he says, I will forever be grateful to UMass for giving him a chance. Right?
That's right.
As a student, I was determined that they would not regret granting me acceptance, and I was proud. I was so proud to say that I'm a graduate. He said, I learned so much about true life rules and the bridge between how the classes I was taking could be applied to the real game of life. Now, he says, today I recognize more keenly that the common thread in our success is not only our us, but just as importantly, an environment conducive to continued growth. Now you know you've heard that before, right? Environments, right, provides growth. So that's awesome. It says, for some reason, for these reasons, I am excited to work in the human resources space, specifically training and development. So he's an HR guy in training and development. So get your HR questions ready for Josh tonight. He said this affords him the opportunity to help provide others another seat at the table for helping to shape organizational strategy. And then in July 2020, right in the middle of this pandemic, see, folks, sometimes you say, well, in this pandemic, I can't do things. Well, Josh says, no, I can do things. In the middle of the pandemic, he launched another seat at the table, diversity, equity, and inclusion program with the Empowered Living Community. Now that is just awesome. Thank you very much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Now you know I'm always excited to have. Hold on a second. What's going on? I'm always excited to have guests on the show, and I'm especially excited to have you on the show because your program, Another Seat at the Table, is just phenomenal. So I want to give our audience an opportunity to really understand what Another Seat at the Table is from the guy who put it together, right? We all have things that we do that we like, but then we have things that we put together and birth. So that's what I really want to talk with you about tonight, so you can help educate our audience on why Another Seat at the Table is so important, why the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion is so important. So the first question I have for you is just tell our audience about your career path. How did you get started, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, Cedrick, first, again, thank you for having me on the show. I would say that my career path has probably been a little unconventional. In the sense that initially when I was in undergrad, I was looking at starting my own business, and I just had this whole thing of hey, I'm gonna be a business owner. I want to be an entrepreneur, and that's what it is that I want to do. And while I was in school, I launched my first business and experienced some modicums of success during my junior and senior year with my business, and really felt like I was on a pathway that was going to take me into what it is that I would be doing in my 20s and thereafter. But shortly after I graduated, we had the recession. Okay, and as we had that recession back in the early 2000s, and specifically around 2008 leading into 2010, I quickly realized that I needed to know more in order for my business to be able to sustain itself. And so I had to make a pivot. I didn't lose the passion for what it is that I was doing. And at that point, I started a mentoring program, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later as we go along. But I had to make a pivot and go more of a traditional route because I had to pay the bills, Cedric. And so if you don't have money, you gotta do something. So I went back and I said, well, look, I have this degree. So because I have this degree, I should be able to have a job. And guess what I found out? Just because you have a degree, that does not mean that you're going to have a job, even though that was something I had been told by family members and others in the community and so forth. And quite frankly, the rules of the game had changed, really
Mhm.
changed on the fly, for me. And graduating as a millennial, I said, well, look, what's my skill set? What can I do? I found myself working 3 jobs, Cedric, to try to make ends meet. And I worked as a courier. So you remember those guys on the or ladies that are on the bike with the messenger bags and so
Yeah.
forth like that. So I wasn't on a bike, okay, but I was driving my car as a messenger in the evenings and so forth. So that was one thing that I was doing. I was an area coordinator for a mentoring program, and so that was a second thing that I was doing. And then thirdly, but it really could have been first, I was working as a long-term substitute teacher, teaching local, state, and national government in Prince George's County, Maryland. And I really enjoyed what it is that I was doing there. But as a substitute teacher, you're not making a whole bunch of money. And so I found myself at this crossroads after about a year of teaching and doing these other, jobs. And it really brought to me a decision that I had to make. Okay, do I go all in on teaching? And I just needed to take an exam to get my teaching certification and a few other things there. But that was one option, but that was going to take some time. And then I got a wild card. I was literally in a bookstore and I was conducting an interview for this mentoring program that I was working for. And a guy came up to me and he asked me, have I ever thought about working in the security field? And I'm like, no, I haven't worked in the security field before. And he said, well, you got a suit on. I think that you would be great to be able to work at this particular contract that we have. Why don't you take a look at it? And quite frankly, Cedric, for me, I grew up watching Martin. And so my idea of security, immediately I went right to Otis. You remember Otis, right? And I
Yeah.
said, look, if that's what it is that I would be doing, I'm not interested in that. I did pay for this college degree and I feel like I should be able to do a little bit more. But what I quickly realized was that I had these preconceived notions that really weren't accurate. It was a lot more to working in the security industry in the 2000s than what it is that I saw depicted on that show. And so I took that opportunity. After speaking to my dad, he said, Josh, look, how's your job search going career wise? And I said to him, I said, well, this guy, he gave me his business card. I was at the bookstore. He asked me if I'd be interested in working security. And my father said, well, did you call him? And I said, no, I'll see if I can give this to my cousin. And he's like, well, do they offer benefits? And I said, yeah, they offer benefits. Do they offer a salary? He said, yeah, they offer a salary. And he said, well, why haven't you called them? Isn't that exactly what you've been praying for? And so, I listened to my dad and I said, you know what? That's right. So I called the guy and I ended up starting as a security officer May 31st of 2010. And I quickly found that all of those skills, those jobs that I had prior to then, actually ended up being something I was using. And that turned into a career for me. So I quickly ended up becoming a trainer using those skills that I had as a teacher, right? And that tied
Mhm.
into that. And it just continued to be a career progression that ended up being one of the best career decisions that I probably could have made. And here I am 10 years later and now in a more senior position for a very large company. So that's been a really great experience for me.
Wow. Well, that's outstanding. your dad did the right thing, right? But by saying,
Yeah.
I'm not saying go do this, asking you questions to make you reflect and think, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your business, because you're also an entrepreneur, right?
Right. Right. So I think 2020, it has been, I mean, can we just say it's been a challenge, right? I mean, it's unprecedented. It's all types
Yeah,
of things that we can say to describe 2020, not to mention unfortunate in many regards. And so aside from the health pandemic, dealing with the coronavirus and all of the measures that we've had to take as a society to be able to respond to that and make those adjustments, we also had the civil unrest that has happened. And that the civil unrest happened from state to state, city to city, and in many cases. And, it was about social, justice, right? And making sure that people really understood that everybody should have the opportunity for equitable today as well as an equitable tomorrow. And so as I looked at the landscape of everything that was going on right now, for me, it was just a matter of, well, what can I do to help? Because that's just it. What can I do to help? And I started looking at the corporate environment that I was working in, and I knew that I had some experiences as it relates to career progression and so forth like that. That while positive in some regards, in other regards, being an African American in corporate America, in my experience, is a very different journey. And I would hear my parents talk about working twice as hard and so forth just to have certain opportunities. But at some point, that whole aspect of working twice as hard and so forth, that dynamic that needs to change, right? And so you should be able to get an opportunity to be hired for a certain job just based off of the experience that you have and the potential that you show and so forth like that. And so that's why I really turned to diversity and inclusion, and I said this could be a part of the contribution that I make during 2020 to help not just lead the conversation, but to help put in some actions that people can take to help move things along, to help us to become more unified as a society, and quite frankly, to be able to facilitate some of those uncomfortable conversations that we've been talking about having for far too long,
right.
and quite frankly, we still aren't where we need to be. And
Yeah.
so that's how that came about this year.
Wow. Wow. And it's amazing that people are not in this day and age still not comfortable with having that conversation. And why do
Right.
you think that is?
Well, I think that, I mean, this certainly has a historical context to it. I mean, this isn't brand new, but these are the dynamics that if we don't speak about it, if we don't really talk about the common ground that we have with each other, what ends up happening is that whatever those thought processes were from past generations, if they go unchecked and we don't talk about it, then they continue to be carried on in the upcoming generations. And so that whole line of thinking that has to be changed, that has to be addressed head on, so that people can start to evaluate, well, why do I see the world the way that I see the world? Why, when I look at someone of a different ethnicity or a different race, why do I potentially think of them as being different than me, just because of what it is that I'm seeing? Is that really valid, or are there some underlining stereotypes going on there that I need to come face to face with and really start to address? And I think anytime we talk about addressing a belief system
Mhm.
that anyone has, that's a challenge, because when you got to look at those constructs that you've had for years and years, that maybe you started to believe from a very early age, then that may cause someone to wonder, well, is everything that I've been dealing with not really what I thought it was? Right. And that's an uncomfortable place for, I think, anyone to be in. But that's the power of having a conversation. That's the power of being able to talk with people that not only look like you, but may look different from you, and being able to hear their life experiences. And I think truly through that type of interaction, we can learn that there is a better way to do things, and we can treat each other in a more positive way.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a part of that,
Yeah.
certainly.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you. And, you know, I love the content
Hmm.
in Another Seat at the Table, but my question is, and I think I kind of know around the content why you put the content together the way you did, but the
Sure.
question I have is more, what made you? I love the name, Another Seat at the Table,
Right.
and you could have given it all kind of names, but
Sure.
why did you select that name?
Yeah, so that's actually a very personal story for me, and in that way. So again, I've talked about starting in an entry level role as a security officer and working my way through the corporate ladder, so to speak, within the organization that I work for. And it was just ironic, Cedric. It really was. About 2 years ago, after working in the Washington D.C. office for the company, I had the opportunity to be promoted to the corporate training team here in Florida. And so I took that opportunity, and me and my family, we moved probably about 5 years ago from Maryland to Florida for this job. And being in that role, knowing what it was like to work in that entry level role, knowing what it was like to be a site supervisor and a manager and so forth like that,
Mhm.
and then being called into the corporate boardroom and having the opportunity to present to the president of the organization, as well as the chief human resource officer of the organization after starting now 10 years ago as a security officer. They gave me another seat at the table, in that sense. And I was able to present a business idea that really was instrumental in changing really how we did business, in that sense. And I think part of that was bringing a different perspective. Okay, there weren't many people that looked like myself that were, in that particular environment, and so it was good to be given that opportunity. But then it was everything that I had been doing up to that point that really helped me to be able to present and for that idea to ultimately be adopted. And so it was really a team effort. But as I sat there, I realized that I wasn't just sitting there on my own accord. It was a lot of effort from a lot of folks, mentors over the years that helped me to be able to get to that point to where I could represent on their behalf as well. And so that's really where the name of Another Seat at the Table came from, because they gave me a seat at the table to be able to present, and it worked out really well. So I was really pleased with that. But I would just add, a lot of what you see in this program is based off of those experiences that I've had on my professional journey.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I love that you had the foresight to reflect back, like sort of like you're sitting at the table and you're reflecting. Wow, I'm here. I
Right.
was asked to be here. Now you walk away from the table and you go, I need to help other people understand
That's
how
right.
important this is and how
Hmm.
vital it is to the people on your team's psyche,
Hmm.
right? Because now you know that, hey, I've been invited to that table, and if I bring value, I'm going to be
Right.
invited back,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Right. Right. So
Wow.
that was a big piece. And then also understanding that, look, I mean, first impressions are lasting impressions, right? And so I knew that it wasn't just me. It wasn't that I was so quote unquote smart that got me that opportunity. There were a lot of other people that laid the foundation, right? For some of those barriers to be not only scaled but broken down, right, and so forth, so that I could have that opportunity too. So I needed to do the same thing in turn for others that I was working with, and others that are in the corporate environment and other environments as well. But
Sure.
we learn that when we hear from each other, our life experiences gives us a different worldview, and that worldview will allow us to have ideas that, because somebody else didn't have those same experiences as us, they're not going to have those ideas.
Yes.
And so we need to be able to come together, present the ideas, and then just talk about why we think that can work or why we think it will not work.
Right.
But we need to first have the opportunity. And I think that's the starting point.
Yes. And everybody, no matter what your background is,
Hmm.
everybody wants an opportunity.
That's right.
Right. Right.
That's right.
Audience, if you're listening, I want you to answer in the comments if you're looking for an opportunity. Doesn't matter what type of opportunity it is. Just are you looking for an opportunity? Then just type in yes.
Right.
Just want to see. So when people hear diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Hmm.
they hear about another seat at the table, but they're not a minority in the sense of color.
Hmm. Hmm.
Some people cringe or step back and say, "Well, I guess this is not for me."
Right.
What would you say to those people?
I would say that that's I guess if I could just say it lightly, I think that that would be they're not giving themselves enough credit for one, right? And then on the other extreme of that, I would actually say it's miscalculated or maybe even misguided, in that sense, because unfortunately, what we've seen happen is that the conversation about diversity and inclusion, more times than not, it goes directly to what? It goes to race, right?
Right.
And so for those reasons, most people, they're going to listen to it and say, okay, well, this is a conversation about race. But it's not just a conversation about race, it's a conversation about truly opportunity for everyone, right? And so, we talk about this in the course, but truly, I can need someone to be empathetic towards me today in the workplace for
Mhm.
whatever the reason, right?
Right.
But there could be someone else tomorrow that needs that same level of empathy, and it has nothing to do with their race, has nothing to do with their gender, okay? Has nothing to do with their, you name it, right? It's
Right.
just a matter of the fact that as people, we all are going to have situations that happen to us. And because we have situations that happen to us, one point or the other, we're going to need somebody to show a level of understanding. Okay. And if we create that level of transparency, if we can create that level of empathy and understanding, then that makes the work environment more conducive for people to bring their real selves to work. And when I say bring your real self to work, I don't mean being unprofessional. Okay. I mean just being able to bring your ideas and bring your experiences and feel like you have a voice with the direction of how things are going, because people value your outlook. And I think that that's so important. And so for those that may not have a certain race or may not be of a certain race, I think that you have to focus in on, well, what are those other things that you bring to the table? If we're talking about more equitable, opportunities for everyone, then race, that's a part of it. Certainly can't discount it, but that's not everything. And you have a voice in being able to really facilitate that conversation. And that's part of what it is that I talk about, and the team that helped to launch this program. We talk about with all of those that have bought the license for the program, and that's being able to facilitate those conversations that otherwise people are just wondering. Well, Cedric, how do we get started? What do we do?
Right.
That program is that piece that
Yeah.
helps to facilitate that conversation.
Yeah. And because there are a lot of people that want to have the conversation, they just
Right.
don't know how to get started. Right. It's
Hmm.
that, well, I know I want to do something, but
Yeah,
I don't want to say the wrong thing.
that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So then all of a sudden, what happens is when they get in that situation, they just bind themselves up and they don't do anything,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because
Hmm.
they're afraid, and we want employers, we want leaders in the organization to understand. And tell me if I'm wrong here, but
Right.
because hey, folks, I shouldn't be telling the guy who created the program what the program is, right?
Hey, this is all a part of the conversation, so it's all good. It's all good. Yep.
um, we want them to feel comfortable with saying, hey guys, in this room right now, in this training, let's be very transparent.
That's right.
Let's have the dialogue. Let's have the
Hmm.
conversation. Maybe there's something that you've heard, you thought, and you're not sure if you should be thinking that way or you should say that. Let's have the
Hmm.
conversation in this room,
Right.
right? That's the only
Yeah.
way we're going to all get better.
That's right. That's right. And to that point, as I'm listening to you, I think one of the major points of this program that I'm really excited about, and glad that we were able to bring this forward, is really a framework that we've introduced. And the crazy thing is, Cedric, I almost didn't share this idea as I was helping develop and work on this program, but it's the PCIHO model. And it's really a framework for people to be able to self-identify, well, where are they in any type of training scenario? Whether we're talking about diversity and inclusion, we're talking about safety training, awareness training, whatever it may be. And so the PCIHO model is the pioneer, champion, the influencer, the hesitator, and the obstructor. And from my experience as a corporate trainer for going on 10 years now, is that no one wants to be seen as being an obstructor. But when we talk about what those behaviors may look like for someone that is obstructing in a group environment, in a team environment, and what does that look like? That may be, Cedrick says an idea, to me, and I say, oh, well, Cedrick, that would never work, right? And I'm dismissive of that idea. Well, what does that do potentially? Now, I know you're very strong-willed and so forth like that. So that might not knock you off too much, but for somebody else that is just looking for an opportunity and they want their thought process to be validated and really appreciated, they may kind of shut down and they
Right.
stop bringing those ideas that really could be a game changer for that organization if they were really to be heard, in that sense. So
Mhm.
it's important for us to be able to understand that regardless of where you are within that framework, even if someone was being an instructor today, if we could help them through that training to be able to move from being an instructor to maybe they're hesitating and saying, well, you know what? I don't know if that program or if that idea would exactly work, but I'm not going to obstruct it from at least being vetted so that we can really see what can happen if that can help change and make things better.
Right.
And I think that we have to celebrate the wins, whether they are big, like a Super Bowl win, or if they're a Week 5 win, so to speak.
Right.
We got to celebrate those wins along the way.
Sure. Yeah. And we know the Steelers have 6 Super Bowls.
See,
So
here we go. Here we go. I knew you was gonna get that in there. Okay, but we'll talk about that. It's all good. Yep.
you're listening to Josh Rich, and Josh is a Baltimore Ravens fan.
Absolutely.
I'm a diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So, by the end of the show, we won't give my application to be a fan of the Steelers.
No,
Um,
thank you. I'm okay. I don't need to be included in that way by the Steelers family. Okay, I'm okay with that.
there's some
But
things
thank
you don't
you.
want to be included in. All right.
No, I'm okay. I'm all right.
All right. I got it.
Yes, sir.
Um, so I love the PCIHO model. Can you, just for the audience,
Mhm.
give them a brief of what is P, what is I mean C, what is I, what is H,
Sure.
just so that they understand.
Right, right. So, if I'm describing the pioneer, it's really it's being that first person, right? That is saying, you know what, I want to champion this cause in my organization for diversity and inclusion. And it doesn't have to be someone from the HR department. This could be someone that just feels passionate about that being an opportunity for their organization to get better. Studies have shown for us, Cedric, that there is a opportunity cost for organizations that really don't have a clearly defined diversity and inclusion strategy. If we look at some of the estimates that we're seeing in terms of the makeup of the workforce, and this was before COVID, right? But the
Mhm.
makeup of the workforce, I've seen estimates that within the next 5 years, more than half, maybe even 3/4 of the workforce could be filled with millennials in that sense. And so we know from millennials that they look at those type of initiatives in terms of diversity and inclusion as a determining factor as to whether they want to be with a company or if they don't want to be with that company long term. And anytime a company has turnover, that's costing that organization money, in that sense. And so again, it does not have to be an HR representative. It could just be someone that's passionate about diversity and inclusion and making sure that their organization is on a sustainable pathway. And that sustainable pathway means that you got to be able to attract the talent that's going to be able to keep your organization going. And so that would be the pioneer. Okay. The second category is the champion. And the champion says, okay, well, maybe I wasn't the pioneer, but I hear what it is that you're saying as the pioneer there, and I want to help uplift and really carry forth that message of diversity and inclusion within the organization. And as a result, I want to lend my voice to be a champion for this particular cause. And then the third point, and I guess I could stop there, but the third point
Mhm.
is the influencer. And so the influencer, they see that there's a pioneer, they see that there's a champion, but this is someone that has good interpersonal skills, so to speak, right? And so they have the ability that when they speak and say that they're going to take part in something, others will say, well, you know what? If Cedric is going to do that, I know that Cedric is a really sharp person. I want to do what it is that Cedric is doing there, and help to really carry forth that cause too. And really using their influence and in that way to help bring other people along. But again, that framework is, I think, something that's very unique to the Another Seat at the Table program, because it's not just the check the box, so to speak, of things that people would expect in a diversity and inclusion program, but it really helps people to look at how they can not only see themselves, but really being able to change the behavior, because we want this to go from being something that is compliance driven to really being people driven at the heart of it.
Right, right, right. So, and then do you go out and train organizations yourself personally?
So yes, I am able to do that. My focus this year, because of the pandemic, quite frankly, has been to help train others, whether they're speakers, trainers, coaches, facilitators, to be able to carry forth that message within their local market. And
Right.
so it's kind of like that saying. I believe I read it from J. Paul Getty, talked about rather having the efforts of one person, or excuse me, 1% of the effort of 100 people versus 100% of the effort of one person. I
Yeah.
think that in this instance, because of the topic that we're talking about and the improvements that we want to see in society, it's not enough for one person to be able to carry that flag, so to speak, right? We need
Sure.
everyone to really see how they can fit into this line of thinking, and become educated on this and having that conversation, so that we can start to change up some of the dynamics that are happening in the workplace, and by extension some of the dynamics that we're seeing play out in society. And so that's why I think it's important for us to be able to have many people,
People.
carrying that message, as opposed to a few.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So it sounds like to me, you, and this is why you put this program together. You love adding value to individuals and to businesses.
Sure. Yes.
So
Yes.
why is adding value to other people so important to you?
Well, we're all in this together. And so when I think about that, and I look at what it is that my grandparents have shared with me, I look at my parents' experience, right? And I think every generation wants to help to play a part in ensuring that the next generation is better off than what they were, right? And so we want to work collectively to make things better. And so because that has been something that has been instilled in me from very early on, in terms of my psyche and my outlook, it was just a natural thing. Where can you go and add value? Now, if we want to look at it from a business perspective, then we can look at supply and demand, right?
Right.
And in terms of adding value in that regard, if there is a demand, then hopefully you have a supply, so that you can meet that. So you can look at it both ways, but I think either way that you look at it, there, it's just going to be better to add value for people than to just do things for yourself. At some point, you're going to look up and say, well, what type of impact have I really made?
Right.
And I think that it's important to be able to do something that is fruitful for you, yes, but at the same time that it's a part of a legacy that you can contribute to.
Sure, sure. And so it's interesting that you launched your business in the middle of this pandemic.
Right.
And so um, one, what made you decide this is the year I'm going to do it? And then the second part of that is, um, what would you tell others who are deciding that they want to start their business even during this time?
Right. So I would just go back to my experience in college, right? And I went to the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. Go Hawks, right? So I need to do that little shout out there, Cedric. But either way, when I go back to that experience, I experienced some success as a young entrepreneur. But like I've shared with others, quite frankly, as you're going along, sometimes you don't know what you don't need to know until you need to know it, right? And
Right.
you're looking on the other side of it, and you're like, wow, how did I get to this point? And you got to make some adjustments. And depending upon what type of savings you have and responsibilities and so forth, you might be able to run on that track a little bit longer, or you may have to make an adjustment.
Hmm.
Um, when I left the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and specifically Somerset County, where the school is located, I thought I was leaving Cedric for maybe a couple of months or a year, right? When I was stepping away to have to go and work another job until I could get my business together. And it's been about 15 years at this point. And so that's been something that's been on my heart for all of this time. And I said, look, if I haven't lost that desire now to do that work, it's not going anywhere. And I feel like it's a part of a larger purpose that I have, in that sense. And so fast forward to this year, it was just like, okay, Josh, you may be waiting for the circumstances to get right, but this gray hair on your face isn't telling you that the circumstances are coming any faster. So at some point, you're gonna have to get out there and just start. Okay, you're gonna figure some things out in the process, but just start and see where things can go. And I tell you that as soon as I made that decision that I would start, opportunities started to really open up, for me, literally within 2 weeks of making that decision. And I've been on this journey and just been going after it, since then. And that was really back in June, frankly, right around Juneteenth. Which is my dad's birthday.
Okay.
And so, I look at that, and that was kind of like a pivotal point in this whole process for me, and just being able to go after it. And was fortunate enough to be able to put together a program that the market was really receptive to. But more importantly, I feel like it's something that was, really needed. And I'm so grateful to have had that experience and to still be having that experience right now.
Well, that is awesome. And so for other entrepreneurs who are thinking,
Hmm.
man, the time right now is too turbulent for me to start my own business. I
Yeah.
want to start, but I'm scared.
Hmm.
But what would you say to those? Because it could be some
Right.
younger millennials, or
Millennials are young too, so it's all good,
yeah, yeah. But it also could be the iGen generation, the generation
Right.
right behind the millennials, right?
Right. Right. So I would say two things. First, don't overthink it. Okay. We all have opportunities that are presented to us. You're gonna have to work for it, right? You have to
Mhm.
work for it, and
Yeah.
I think that a stereotype or I think it's really a stereotype that people think, oh, well, being an entrepreneur, you're your own boss, and so that means that you just making money and you're doing all these. No, it does not work like that. You got to wear multiple hats, right? As a leader of an organization, especially as you're getting started. And so I look at those different challenges that may come up. And I heard an analogy recently that I think is pretty fitting for this. But basically, it talked about stoplights, right?
Mhm.
And so I forget who it is that shared this analogy. But basically, they talked about being in the driveway of your home. Imagine that you're with your family, you're getting ready to go on a vacation, and everybody is ready, seatbelts buckled, bags packed, all of that. And so your family is saying to you, okay, well, Cedric, is it time for us to leave? And you say, well, no, we're waiting for the lights to turn green. We want all the lights to turn
Mhm.
green, right? If you're sitting there in the driveway and you're waiting for all the traffic lights to turn green, guess what's not going to happen?
You never
You're
gonna
never going to start, right? So, using that same rationale, at some point you got to go out there. You're going to get some red lights along the way. You're going to come across a yellow light that's going to tell you to slow down, right? Um, and you also are going to come across some green lights that will tell you to continue to go in that sense. But either way, just getting out there and getting going, that's going to help you to get further along and closer to your goal than it would be if you're just waiting for everything to be ideal.
I
Okay. So
like
there's no ideal time for that.
I like that. Stop waiting for all the green lights. Just get
That's right.
started.
Get started.
Awesome.
Yes,
Awesome.
sir.
I really do like that. The law of curiosity says growth is stimulated by asking why.
Hmm.
So in other words, ask more questions.
Right.
As a leadership coach, thought
Hmm.
leader, mentor, how do you come up with great questions to ask people?
Well, I think it's a few things. One, it's just having a conversation like you and I are having a conversation right now. And as you're listening to those folks that you're speaking to, they're going to tell you a lot about what's important to them as you are just going through that conversation, right? And
Mhm.
so I think, to borrow from Stephen Covey and his book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the seven habits is to start with the end in mind. And so I think anytime you're engaging in a direction shaping conversation like that with people that you may be coaching, it's really understanding, well, what are they working towards? Okay, help them to envision that end result, that end goal that they want to be able to achieve.
Mhm.
Once they're able to envision that end result, then that's really the guide that you're going to use for the rest of your interaction with them, in a sense of coaching them to be able to achieve that. So either their actions, their decisions are going to do one or two things. It's either going to put them closer to that goal that they said that they want to achieve, or it's going to push them further away from that goal. And you use that as a filter. In my experience, you use that as a filter, and they can see for themselves, kind of like what you pointed out to me. I hadn't thought about it like that, but my father did for me by saying, well, Josh, do they have benefits? Do they have do they have a salary, and so forth? And as that person is able to answer those questions that you're kind of mirroring for them, and they can take it at that point, now they're going to get more buy-in to what it is that you're discussing, because it's not you telling them what to do. It's
Exactly.
them having the realization that this is what it is that they should be doing because they said that they wanted to do
Right. Absolutely. And I've heard this before that most people have all the information they need.
it. Hmm.
Right. They just need someone to help bring it out of them.
That's right.
And you're going to bring it out of them by not telling them what to do, but asking them questions and let them tell you. And it's amazing what happens is it was back here. Now, all
Hmm.
of a sudden, because you said it, it comes to front of mind. It becomes in your consciousness, and you go, "Oh yeah, I,"
Right.
So I absolutely I love that. So what's absolutely excites you right now?
My family. It really excites me. This year has been it's been very challenging, right?
Sure. Yeah.
My son is 5. He just started kindergarten,
Uh-oh.
and I got to tell you, when my wife and I were thinking about him starting kindergarten, we had all these different ideas of what his first day of school was going to be like, and none of them that we envisioned was him being at home in the living room on the first day of school, right? And doing virtual school. So that just changed up that whole, dynamic. But
Mhm.
what I'm seeing is that children can be so resilient, in the sense that they're able to make adjustments to things and just be okay in a way that we're just like, oh my goodness, that's great that you could be like that. Let me learn from you and not get so caught up in these adjustments that we're having to go through right now. And that's exciting for me to be able to, be a part of that as a dad and so forth. And my daughter having a chance to learn as she observes what it is that her brother is doing in school, because she's 3. And so that's a very interesting, dynamic, there for sure, right? So you
Absolutely.
know about that. So, but all in all, that is certainly something that excites me, and I just feel very fortunate.
Well, that's
Um,
awesome. I'm just excited.
yeah.
I'm glad that those kids that young age is your kids and not mine. Mine are 30 to 33 and 28. So I'm just like
You
love it.
don't want to go back and relive some of that,
No. I enjoyed it. It was great. I have those memorable moments and all
Right.
that stuff, but whew, man, on this side of it, it's just yeah. Although, this side of it could bring a whole lot of different challenges as well,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad I'm past that journey now. And
Well, I'm in the midst of it, so I'm so pray for me, right? So
Yeah,
you know some things that I'm gonna be experiencing. So yeah.
exactly. So what keeps you it's a little bit different question. What keeps you motivated and driven?
It's one of those things again. You know, I, I'm sure she's probably going to check this out and listen to
Uh,
it,
no,
but
we've made sure that she can't see it.
but truly, I will tell you that I think for me, I felt like I was driven before having a family,
Mhm.
right? But I think that having a family, being married, it kind of put things in a whole different perspective, for me, right? And when you're able to, and in this case, when I was able to really have some priorities outside of what I thought would just be ideal,
Uh-huh.
and realizing that, hey, again, you gotta go after, what it is that you want in that regard, and it may not unfold exactly how you were envisioning that things were going to unfold, but helping to shape and create a really a legacy in that regard, and to really help your family. That's something that really excites me. I find myself thinking more about what it is that I want things to be like, for them, and just trying to do my part in that regard, and having that type of team has been it's been incredible, in that regard. So I think we all have challenges,
Sure.
no doubt, but at the same time, being able to go at it as a team has been much more uplifting and comforting for me, than to try to take it all on my own, in that sense.
Yeah.
So that's an encouragement, keeps me excited, keeps me motivated, because I want to do my part.
Awesome. I absolutely love that. Yeah, your perspective when you're single versus when you're married, and then and so there's three perspectives. One when you're
Yeah.
single, then
Hmm.
there's the perspective of when you're married,
Hmm.
then there's a different perspective that happens when you are married with children,
That's right. That's
right?
right. No doubt.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So um, awesome.
That's it.
The law of environment says growth thrives in conducive surroundings.
Hmm.
Right. Give our audience two or three things that you do to help yourself or help others around you continue to grow and develop.
Well, I think one, and let's just say for my team, for example, um, I say to them, I say, well, what are our goals, right? So, as a leader, you want to cast a goal of what it is that we're working towards. But what I found is it's not enough to just put the goal out there. There needs to be more than putting the goal there. You want to have that buy-in from your team, because if they can buy into it and they bring their ideas and so forth, then we can accomplish that goal probably a lot faster than
Sure.
just one person saying that this is what we need to be able to accomplish, right?
Right.
And you want the team to be able to take ownership of that goal. What's their piece of the pie that they are going to, make sure that they carve out, and make sure that they're delivering in that regard. And when they can take ownership of it, again, it's not you just attempting to carry all of that on your own. It's really a collective that's helping to push that forward. So, I think one is understanding the goals that we're working towards, and ask, even if it may be a life goal that someone has.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't even necessarily have to fit into the quote unquote work environment or into the business environment. It's, well, what's their motivation for coming to work right now? Is it just to be able to take care of their family, or is it to be able to push themselves forward in a different dream that they have? Whatever that may be, if you can connect in that way, then that makes it a lot more meaningful in terms of those day in and day out communications. And then the last part I would add to that, after we agree upon those team goals, people take ownership about that. The last part is holding each other accountable for it. And so when we have that accountability, then that really creates the conducive environment, right,
Sure.
for that growth to occur. Because we've all, in essence, we've signed off, maybe not literally, but we signed off on the fact that I'm giving Cedrick permission to hold me accountable for what it is that I said I wanted to accomplish.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I always have a segment in here called Would You Rather?
Okay.
Right? So, would you rather pick the year that you die or pick the way that you die?
Wow. Can I say neither? But so would I rather pick the year that I die or the way that I die? I don't know. How about the year? I like to have more years there. Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Would you rather fulfill your biggest wish or resolve your biggest regret?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say fulfill my biggest wish.
Fulfill your biggest wish. All
Yep.
right. And then the last one is, would you rather have free gas for 25 years or have your dream car?
Free gas for 25 years.
Free gas.
I could do some other things. So
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what. So I didn't have to buy gas for my car. So from 1998 until 2018, when I retired, I've always had a company car.
oh my goodness.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I just drive to the gas station, put my company card in, and drive right on off. Right. I never worried
Yeah.
about it, never thought about it or anything like this until I retired. And you know, February of 2018, I had
Wow.
to start paying for my own gas.
Right.
And then I started going, oh my God. No wonder
Right.
people always worry about the gas price.
Exactly. Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
even worried about it.
Yep.
Because my wife had a company car too, so it was no big deal. Uh,
Yes.
and so I've been looking at cars recently, and and just a little off the subject, but
Sure.
around that, would you rather? I was looking at cars recently, and I absolutely love that S class Mercedes.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
So
Yep.
that was I was going to
Beautiful
get.
car. Yep.
Yes, that is what I was going to get
Hmm.
until I realized it's only 18 miles to the gallon. I'm like, man,
Right.
I'm gonna be filling up a whole lot. So
Unless it's your Sunday car, and that's something different. But
Sunday car, man, that's like my grandfather.
I'm just saying, just, unless it was Sunday car. But yeah, if you're driving that around, you
I'm
you
driving
got
it
to
every
understand the
day.
cost. That's
Yeah,
right.
and so now I'm looking at hybrids. Uh,
Got it.
so
Understood.
yeah, so
Understood.
they need to come up with a hybrid. Other than that, because I was looking at a Toyota Avalon hybrid is like 43 miles to the gallon. I'm like, see, that's what I'm talking about.
That's impressive.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
exactly.
And if I could just add in,
Yeah,
I think that those types of things change when you have a family as well, right? So, that's a part of your calculus as you're looking at, do I do this or do I do that? And I guess the sooner you realize what's really important in that regard, I'm not saying that you can't have a nice car and so forth, but you make a decision as to what's really important for you. Now, for somebody having that car is, hey, that's their dream. They want to do it. There's
right.
nothing wrong with that. But if you are having that conversation like you're having right now and saying, man, I only get 18 miles, to the gallon,
Yeah.
I might want to look at a different car. That's okay too. You
Yes.
just have to at least go through the thought process because you don't want to be surprised on the back end with whatever the results are that you're getting.
Yeah. I'm looking at my age. I'm looking at practicality. I love that S class, and I was like, boom,
Hmm.
that's what I'm getting. And then I looked up gas mileage. Like, oh no, I'll be at the gas station every yeah, twice a day. I'm not doing
Got it. Got it.
so, all
That's
right.
funny.
So, what's one of your most defining moments in your life? What has been one of the most defining moments in your life so far?
Okay, so I would say right there with one of the most defining moments of my life is my children being born. Okay, the first time holding my son and so forth, and I would even go as far to say the first time that we actually put him in the car as we left the hospital, and realizing that, hold on, we got a whole nother person coming home with us. There's no other help. We're gonna have to figure this thing out. So that was certainly a defining moment. But I guess in a business sense, one of my most defining moments would be when I was in college, and I had a speaking engagement at a local school, and we were rolling out the mentoring program that I started, and the principal introduced me, and when they called me up on stage, the school gave me a standing ovation. The students gave me a standing ovation. And I felt like it just went on for minutes and minutes, Cedric. I really did. And I'm like, do they realize who it is that they are, clapping for? Like, is it somebody else that they were expecting to come up here? But it was just really touching to be able to have that experience. And when the principal asked how many of you would like to have a mentor, and like all of the hands in the auditorium was going up, I just felt like, wow, okay, we're really on, to something here. This is something that's needed, and that moment has just stayed with me, in that regard. So there's still more work to do, and I really want to be able to make a more of an impact in that regard. So I'm still driven by that, but that stays with me.
Wow, that is awesome, and it's awesome that you're giving back to students in school today. So
Yeah.
we need more of that, right? So if you could change one thing in the world,
hmm
one thing, what would it be, and why?
Uh, I think the one thing that if I could change one thing in the world, I know it sounds so lofty and so forth, but I really would want us to have more peace, right? Just to have peace, and in that regard. That doesn't mean that you don't have disagreements, but I think the way that we go about resolving those disagreements, that's what I would like to change, so that we can get along. So.
Okay,
Yeah, that would be my one thing. I know that's lofty, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's lofty, but it's definitely would change the world,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So if someone wanted to follow up with you, they wanted to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
sure. So, I'm on LinkedIn under Joshua T. Rich, so they can follow me there or get in contact with me on LinkedIn. Same thing on Instagram. And then as far as the diversity and inclusion program, they can actually go to the website yourdiversitytraining.com and be able to find out more information about the Another Seat at the Table program.
Yourdiversitytraining.com. All right, I'll put that in.
Universitytraining.com. Yep.
Perfect. Just
Yep. And I'm certainly would be looking forward to connecting as people reach out.
awesome. And so you are a Ravens fan, like I mentioned earlier.
I certainly
Um,
am.
and
Uh-huh.
what made you decide to become a Ravens fan?
Well, I'm from Baltimore, and so um, before I was born, so I'm gonna date myself a little bit, but before I was born, the Colts they left Baltimore, and so I went to high school right across the street from Memorial Stadium. And that's where the Colts used to play, back in the day. And so that stadium was empty for years. Now the Orioles still played there before Camden Yards was built around the inner harbor of Baltimore. But when Baltimore was able to get uh, unfortunate for the Cleveland fans, right? So we understand how that goes, right? Teams move from one city to the next. But when the Browns initially moved from Cleveland to Baltimore in '96, I mean, I was a fan from day one. And I'll give you this one thing, Cedric. In 1995, when the Cowboys played the Steelers in the Super Bowl, I was a Steelers fan. Neil O'Donnell kind of let me down that year. Not trying to bring up bad bad memories for you, but I was rooting for the Steelers in '95. But once the Ravens came to Baltimore and in '96, I turned the page on that and embraced the home squad. So that's what it is. That's what it is. And so it was great being able to witness football coming back to Baltimore.
Okay. All right. Well, I can tell you what, we always have good games when Baltimore and the Steelers play.
That's right.
Here they're coming up in a couple more weeks, and
Coming up in a couple of weeks. Not
yeah,
that I'm keeping track of anything like that, because it's,
yeah.
it's another game for us. But
Uh,
but
okay.
yeah, no, I'm joking. I'm joking. That's a big deal. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be a fun time. Well, Josh, I tell you what, man, I truly enjoyed you coming on the show. Before we go, any
Mhm.
final thoughts you want to give to our audience?
Well, I'm like you were just sharing. I'm really glad to have had the opportunity to come on to the show. Love the work that you're doing, and I think that this show is so impactful. You asked that question earlier in terms of people that are looking to get started with a business, and so forth. What can they do? Well, I'm just going to say I think that they could listen to what it is that you have to say, so that that can help them to get started, because they can learn a lot of those lessons that you share.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I definitely thank you for coming on. I always learn something new, different from our guests, and
Yeah,
tonight was no different. Another
thank
seat
you.
at the table is the program that Josh Rich put together. It's all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So tomorrow night, tomorrow at 5:30 Central Time, Talk Leadership with Cedrick will be on. The president of the National Sales Network Houston chapter will be on our on the show, Mr. Ladera Hopkins. So tune in for that. Then at 6:30 Central Time tomorrow night on the Empowered Living channel, I will be doing a teaching. The title is Own Your Dream.
Wow.
So if you want to own your dream, come on over there tomorrow night and check out the lesson that I'm going to be doing. It's called the Black Entrepreneurs Institute show, but I'll be doing an individual teaching during that show tomorrow. Then come back here at 7:30 tomorrow evening for a talk with TK, and this is all about talking about mindset for the young people in the audience, millennials, for iGeners. Come over here tomorrow night and talk with TK. Thursday, Talk Leadership with Cedrick on the radio. We'll be on again at 4 p.m. Central Time at ibgr.network. And I'm going to always leave you with this. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Don't be on the menu. Good night,
There we
folks.
go.